Shark Nation Radio. All experts, all the time. News, politics, sports, and much more. Always real and never boring. Tune in and join the Shark Nation. Backlash with Adam Taxin, where people come to get in-depth analysis of trending topics. Listen to Adam break down the latest news as only he can. Enjoy callers wittingly conversing and debating with the one and only Adam Taxin. And now, the real most interesting man in the world and your host of Backlash, Adam Taxin.
Welcome back to Backlash here on Shark Nation Radio. I am Adam Taxin, and I said we're going to be a little looser with the format. There's no reason we need to be restricted. We're doing things differently. It's 2017, so when we have something good, we're just going to run with it. Now, I happened to read Lenny Dykstra's sort of autobiography. It's a real autobiography, House of Nails, last week, and I said, what the hell? I'll try to reach out to him. Maybe get him on the show. He was one of my favorite players of all time on my favorite baseball team of all time, the Philadelphia Phillies. And I had luck. It worked. I talked to his assistant. She liked me enough to put me in touch with him. And today is going to be an interview with Lenny Dykstra. In fact, we had a good interview. It went on for a while. So we're doing this in 3 parts. And in fact, I'm going to have a little post-game analysis with Keith Levenberg at the end of this today. Who knows what we'll do tomorrow. And that's really it for my introduction. Let's get into my extended interview with baseball great and best-selling author Lenny Dykstra.
All right. I said we had a big guest today, and that is the case, especially those of us who grew up in the Philadelphia area or the New York area, especially the 718 over there. And he's been in the news the last week or so in particular. His best-selling New York Times bestseller book is now out on paperback, and he has a video about the current not-so-good fortunes of the New York Mets that has been going viral over the last, 24 hours. You've heard of him, Lenny Dykstra. Thanks for coming on, and I'll give a big flowery intro after I say hi to you and do the greetings, because you're going to love this.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. I mean, I don't usually interview people who were who I had posters of when I was in college. You know, that's not something I usually do. Full disclosure, I am from the Philadelphia area, but his main years in Philadelphia were 89 to 95. He came to the team literally weeks after I graduated from high school and was saying goodbye to the Philadelphia area. So I didn't go to as many games during that time as I would have liked to, but I did get to go to some in 93, and that was a particularly great year. Lenny, I know you're going to have a lot to say. Can I give you the nice, long intro that I think you're going to like?
I love it.
Okay. All right. This may be the only 30, 40 seconds I speak in a row during what could be a long interview. But here's the hype. Here are the bullet points. Howard Stern's greatest interview ever, according to some. And not only that, he can go clean. He can go a little bit more adult with the conversation. I think he's the only person I've ever heard Howard Stern say, tone it down before I throw up here. He can do that. One story which is not mentioned, which I think was in Jeff Pearlman's book, and I didn't even talk about this during the 3 pre-interviews I did with Lenny over the last 3 days. There was a story. He was the goodwill ambassador baseball sent to France in the winter of 1994, spring 1994, whenever before the next season after the Phillies were in the World Series. And this is the kind of heart this guy has. There was a limo driver from France who had been taking people to the most expensive restaurants throughout his career and had been doing this for decades. No one had ever invited him to come sit at the table at the fancy restaurant where he was until Lenny Dykstra did that kind of thing. It shows the kind of heart and the down-to-earthness of this man. He made and lost a fortune, and we're going to get into that. It's very well covered in his book, House of Nails. And he hasn't just done it on paper with stocks. He has been an entrepreneur in a very tangible, real sense with his series of car washes in Southern California, which he started while he was a player and realized he was not going to be a player forever. I mentioned the New York Times bestseller, which is now out on paperback as of, I think, 2 weeks ago. On the more risque side, Hide the Kids, he has sort of turned the art of pleasing a woman, which is very important. You know, I'm Jewish, and this is mentioned in some of the more, maybe not in the Torah itself, but in the more obscure Talmudic readings. It's important. And he's been able to sort of talk about his mastery of that art, which I'm not going to get into necessarily here, despite the challenges that come from age, too much partying, etc. You know what I'm going to talk about. Now, about baseball, second in MVP voting to Barry Bonds in a year, which was clearly an MVP year, but, you know, the best player of all time, arguably, had a great year also. And he did something that mathematicians can really appreciate. In 1993, the year the Phillies went to the World Series, he led the league in at-bats and bases on balls, which, since bases on balls don't count as at-bats, is extremely hard to do. It's not like leading the league in both home runs and RBIs. Just a little bit more, Lenny. Hit the first and second home runs that night in Wrigley Field, I believe, off Rick Sutcliffe, who was a great pitcher for a while in the 80s, and Mike Bilecki, who, he was in the game after Sutcliffe got chased out, or the rain did. He's an incredibly...
No, the rain did, yeah.
Okay, I'm almost done. It's all going to be about you in a sec. Incredibly engaging and entertaining, which I hope you'll find out while we talk to him. And one last thing about baseball, and this is my bias as a Phillies fan. He's closer with the Mets now, but I'm closer with the Phillies, who, by the way, have the worst record in baseball, deservedly so right now. But 5 Phillies World Series teams in my lifetime, 80, 83, 93, 08, 09. Of those 5 teams, there was only one time where you could say someone is the man, singular. 80, Schmidt and Carlton, both incredible years. Wasn't one of them, and McGraw too. I don't want to leave him out. 83 was just kind of a weird team. 08, 09, a number of guys, but in 1993, Lenny Dykstra was the man for the Phillies, singular. A lot of other good players, but he was the star, without a doubt. So with that in mind, let's talk to him. Lenny, thank you again for coming on.
All right, man. That was good. No, the only thing I was saying is what happened was on that night home run in Wrigley Field, they just, it was a big deal to begin with because the fans did not want to have night games.
Right.
So the first night home run was Rick Sutcliffe was pitching and it got rained out. Mm-hmm. So it got washed out, so it didn't count. It just so happened that, they were playing very sporadically at that time. So we went back into Chicago for another night game, and no one had hit one yet. So I hit it again. I hit another one. That was off Mike Bilecki. So obviously the Wrigley Field gods wanted me to hit the first night home run,
Yeah, was it off your first at-bat of the game in either case? Because you would have been the first person at bat a lot of the time.
Yeah, Mike Bilecki, Sutcliffe and Bilecki, yeah. Sutcliffe for sure. I'm not sure about Bilecki. Sutcliffe, though, yeah, both of them were, there used to be a Torco sign out there in right field. Uh-huh. I love playing at Wrigley Field, though, man. It was, like I used to get into it with the bleacher guys. And
I can imagine. I can only imagine.
Yeah, but I used to get into it with all the opposing fans,
But you loved it, right?
I love playing on the road,
And the fans generally liked you on the road. The other players didn't want to play.
No, the fans hated me. The other team hated me. I was voted the most hated player in the league 5 years
I know that,
in a row.
the players. But the guys who sit in the bleachers, go to every game, they appreciate a guy who's very determined, hard work, and also give it back to them, no?
I would just tell them to go, you know what?
What were your
because I wasn't there to make friends. That's the problem with the game now. I heard they're adopting new uniforms pretty soon. They're wearing skirts out there.
Right. What were your favorite places to play, leaving aside the extracurricular stuff after the game, which we can get into later? But did you have favorite places to play?
Yeah, the extracurricular stuff, there's not enough time. But I had one favorite place. It was Atlanta. I'll tell you why in a second. But the one place that was really rough with the extracurricular stuff was Pittsburgh. Bunch of coal miners' daughters, man. So I finally figured it out, and I had my hanger-oners, that would always get the presidential suite ready. So I said, you know what? Why don't you guys just go rent a U-Haul, back it up to the University of Pitt, and get all the college chicks and tell them free beer, drinks at the presidential suite and at the Penn Hotel, and boom. Pittsburgh went from the worst to the best.
Interesting. But you didn't use that approach elsewhere?
Well, no, I mean, when I played for Philadelphia, I would, I lived on the main line, so I would cruise the Villanova campus in my,
right.
In my sled. But as far as my place to play, it wasn't so much that I had so much success there. It was because it was Atlanta, and I really didn't have told no one this story. But this is when Ted Turner and Jane Fonda were together, and I, the one thing as a leadoff hitter, see, they couldn't start the game until I got in the box, and so remember, I'm all shredded. This is when I'm with Philly. I'm ripped. I'm like a Greek statue, and get the big chew in, and so I used to take a long, wide, looping, like strut to home plate, and I'd stop and always stare at Jane Fonda and stop and try to make eye contact with her, and I'd look at her and I'd say, I wanna, what to you. every time. I don't know if I never got there, by the way.
Right.
I don't know if she saw me or didn't, but she seemed to be looking at me. So that's why Atlanta was fun, because they'd stay a few innings, and so it was. Plus, they'd always be yelling at me, get in the box, and I'd say, "Excuse me."
Did Ted ever give you dirty looks? Because I know a story about Ted with the Phillies that I know from my parents. You know the story about him, right?
Man. No, I don't know. I just know. Last I heard about him, he was making steaks or something.
Buffalo steak.
Meat. Yeah, I don't know. I know he's goofy, dude. He took the uni. Didn't he put the uni on for a while?
He tried to be manager. Then the league prevented him from doing it. Bowie Kuhn stepped in. But get this. There was a pitcher, the number 2 pitcher on the Phillies in 1980 was a guy named Dick Ruthven. And he was a key part of that World Series team that won. The only reason they got him from Atlanta was apparently Turner put the moves on Ruthven's wife at a party, and Ruthven said he was going to kick his ass. And Turner, of course, is the owner. So I can't remember who they traded. I think it was Gene Garber. He was an okay relief pitcher. That's how the Phillies got their number 2 starter. It was done immediately, and they needed a pitcher, and they got him.
What a crazy story.
Yeah. So if you did payback to Jane Fonda, Vietnam vets might not be so happy with you, unless you treated her badly in the process. But
I'm a big supporter of the troops, man. So
yeah.
But anyway, that was always interesting. But as far as where I hit the most success I had was at Houston.
Why is that?
Because I could. Well, no, because there was never going to be a rain delay, so I could always get the. I became a chemist right. Philly days, so I could always get. I knew when to launch, exact time, down to the second, and relaunch, and so, mentally I knew that my ammunition was going to hold up,
It makes sense, the lack of rain delays, and probably Mitch Williams wasn't on the team then, and that was problematic in terms of your. We won't go there right now.
It's not even where can you even go? I mean,
you know what? I do have a question. I want to get. Houston is known because the '86 series was such a big deal. You had the key hit in extra innings in that incredibly long. What was it? 16-inning games.
Well, actually, not in extra innings. I did have one then, but that's a good point you bring up. That's a very good point that you bring up there. Okay, I give you credit for that because, Adam, that Mike Scott was unhittable that year in '86, especially at the Dome. And we couldn't touch him. Remember, he's pitching Game 7, so we're down 3-0. Okay, in the 9th, Bob Knepper's pitching the lefty, so Davey, clueless Davey's got me on the bench, and so he's throwing a one-hitter cruising right into the 9th, and so it's not looking good because the next day we got Scott, who we couldn't touch. So Davey walks down to the end of the bench, says to me, "You're leading off the 9th." And I said, "Oh, you finally want to win, huh?" And so I hit a triple, and that triple was actually, if I don't hit that triple, we do not go to that World Series because you know, I'm saying there's probably a pretty good chance that we wouldn't have beat Mike Scott in Game 7. You know.
I remember he was lights out. It was like Hershiser in '88 or something.
Yeah, it's just one of them things that people, you know, you talk about the big hits and the things, but that there, because Nether was he's throwing a one-hitter, man. He's just cruising.
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah, that started everything. And then we went on to play a crazy game, and that was like one of the loudest, the loudest I've ever, you know, played in the game. But
you know what?
That was a crazy year that year, man. Crazy.
Well, here's a question I have about postseason. You only went to 3 postseasons. And you're not known as a home run hitter, so that when I ask you about the stadiums, the short fences don't matter. Like a Fenway or a right field in Yankee Stadium wouldn't matter that much. But you hit a lot of postseason home runs, and you didn't hit that many regular season home runs. You were one of the smallest players in the league. What was it about the postseason that got you to that level?
Yeah, I'll give you a stat. There's certain. Well, first of all, they ranked the 10 best postseason hitters of all time.
Right.
And number, you know, you're talking about, like, you know, you're talking about Lou Gehrig being number 3, Babe Ruth number 2. Number 10 was Derek Jeter, Hall of Famer. Number 9 was George Brett, Hall of Famer. And number 8 is this little runt named Lenny Dykstra.
Yeah.
Then Paul Molitor, and then Kirk Gibson, then Lou Brock, and then, you know, Lou Gehrig, Babe Ruth, and there you go. So what it was is, it's kind of like in life, you know, in your business, why you're successful is you have no fear. And see, I wanted to be up in those situations where most players were afraid to be up in those situations because they're afraid to fail. Where I took the opposite approach. Like, you got nothing to lose and everything to gain, you know, and I don't know, I was just able to get locked in, you know, and I played in, you know, the 86 playoffs and World Series, and then went, you know, 88 the playoffs when Davey messed that all up, and then in 93. So I was very fortunate to play in 2 World Series with 2 of the best sports towns, you know, sports fans in the whole country, you know.
Yeah, it's just interesting. Did you have more adrenaline? Is that where the power started? You hit, 4 homers in the World Series or in the postseason in '93?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I did. I adrenaline was for sure, and I was just a red light player, man. I liked to put on a show. I liked to be up when the game was on the line, you know. I guess you could say I kind of had brass balls, you know.
Right.
You're listening to part 1 of Adam Taxin's 3-part interview with baseball great and best-selling author Lenny Dykstra here on Backlash on Shark Nation Radio.
It's interesting you mentioned fear, because we did some prep before the show, and we were talking about how that relates to so many parts of life. And if I can go off baseball for a while, you mentioned to me, and I agree with you, except I think it's more than 80% of the population, that most people go through life, and a lot of them hate you for it, because they're afraid of everything. They don't like their lives, and they make their decisions out of fear about their careers, about their marriages, about just about everything. Those people go through life.
Fear and just okay with being average, you know. I mean, I wrote a book, and you know, you mentioned it. And by the way, we can get off baseball the rest of the way if you like.
Fine with me. I mean, you covered
baseball's
it.
Not even. I mean, it's not. I don't really even enjoy baseball like I did, but so my opening line in my book was, my biggest fear in life was being average. And I think that's where it is. People, they're kind of okay with it. Meaning, people, it's kind of like, I like to search for certain things that are really interesting, and I found this site called wimp.com, and there's a guy named Sam Harris that talks about it's always now. It says, you know, wimp.com, it's always now. And I kind of I kind of like time. You know, we take time for granted, and we, you know, it's the one thing that we can't buy. I mean,
you wrote
think
that
about it.
Yep, I agree completely.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, especially when you've been
in my life.
Yeah, when you get locked in a cage for almost 3 years, you know, that's when you know what I mean. So I don't live back there. I live going forward, but see, it's also about wanting to be a factor, bringing something to the party where you know, when you roll a 7, they put you in a box.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that you did something where you're an impact. You know, you may have been impacted in some way, some shape or form. So I kind of got this like feeling. I still haven't done the biggest thing in my life yet. You know, there's still something bigger. And whether that's helping people, whether that's giving people hope, because you know, I mean, look, we all know how it works in this country. You know, everyone loves an underdog. They're going to root for you, but then when you get to the top and you're making millions, you know, the rooting kind of goes a little bit, you know, to the wayside.
Mm-hmm. And
then, you know, when I fell and when I went, you know, the other way, I went lower than them. And so, you know, misery loves company. But then I came, you know, kind of back with just raw, honest, just, you know, truth. And they all embraced it. The fans have embraced that honesty. And, you know, because, you know, if you're honest with the public, they'll forgive you, and they'll, you know, if they know it's genuine. But
I think it's certainly the case in Philadelphia, and I don't want to dwell on baseball, but I got to bring it up sometimes when you give me the opportunity, and it's the right analogy. Philly, since '76, has sort of had a Rocky complex, and I think that's benefited certain athletes and not necessarily others. Pete Rose, Allen Iverson, who were smaller guys who were sort of underdogs based on their size. It hasn't been so great for, say, like a Donovan McNabb or a Mike Schmidt. And for that matter, in your category, you could put Terrell Owens. They loved him because he was the hardest working player. I mean, you could tell how intense. And I think that was even more the case in Philadelphia, and probably a number of the members under the 93 teams who sort of gave off a blue-collar vibe. So, but I think it's true in general, too, but I think it's particularly...
Yeah, but that 93 team, you can talk to pretty much anybody, any Philadelphia, you know, baseball fan that's, you know, been, you know, watched the games when they won in 08 or whatever, and they'll all tell you their favorite year was 93, because we literally flipped that city upside down and drew 3.6 million people.
Oh, yeah.
And we were on a mission of mercy. I mean, nobody wanted to come to the vet and play us. I mean, they just wanted out of there. And like I said, you know, that was a well, you know, we got along. There was a tight-knit club there, and everyone got along, and we stuck together, and you know, we played hard on and off the field that year, and that was one of the best years of my life, actually.
Well, what was it? I mean, they were in last place the year before. I think there was a 13-game winning streak at one point in 91 or 92, but what was it in 93 that it all worked out? Obviously, lack of injuries. How much of a part is clubhouse chemistry between you, Holland, and Dalton, the leaders of the team, probably?
Yeah, it's a lot, actually. It's a lot. I mean, it can even get down to, you know, who's controlling the music, you know, I mean, you know, and that team there, you know, Dalton was the vocal leader, and, you know,
as catcher is
I led, well, he was just you know, Dalton was, he's got that leader mentality, and he's, you know, one of the toughest guys I've ever played with, and, you know, I got, you know, one, you know, reach out and give him, you know, my thoughts are always with him, you know, fighting the brain tumor he's got, and he's so tough, he's still fighting it. But the thing about it is I was more of a one-on-one kind of guy. I would pull a guy to the side and kind of, you know, talk to him and give him, you know, a few things. Baseball, people, when they think about me as a baseball player, they got me pretty much all wrong. I was a very, very complex player, meaning I was all about the numbers and percentages. I know what I would hit if the count went to 0-1 opposed to 1-0. So all those little things mattered, especially over 162 games, you know. But, you know, I mean, look, I'm not bragging. I'm just
right.
giving you the fact. I mean, I led the National League in hits 2 years, 2 separate seasons. I mean, only one person in the world can say that. Because remember, we're not talking about, you know, like the California League or, meaning we're talking about the major leagues. Next step up from there is God. Meaning, you know, we're talking about, you know, not the best players in Florida, not the best players in New York, not the best players in the United States, not the best in Japan, China, Puerto Rico, Dominican, in the world. And there's only 30 jobs available in the whole world. So think about how hard it is to get one of those jobs, because remember, to get one, you have to take someone's job.
Right.
So it's, you know, I mean,
you had a situation like that in New York with your presence made a guy who had won MVP expendable, and you said he was very quiet. George Foster sounds like he resented you and the whole situation in New York because you came in and Kevin Mitchell came in, and suddenly...
Well, he was done. George Foster, like, we don't even want to waste our breath talking about him. He's one of the weirdest guys I've ever met. That guy was a peculiar dude. And by the way, he was old. He was done. And, you know, I mean, again, like I said, when it comes to baseball, you know, nobody's... I'll go ahead and have with anybody they're going to lose. As soon as a player turns 30 years old, his performance is going to decline, and it's going to get worse when he hits 33. It's pretty, you can stick a fork in him at that point. And so isn't it like ironic how that's the way the system's set up? That's when you get paid the most money when your career's over.
Well,
you pretty much get paid for what you did.
You're listening to part 1 of Adam Taxin's 3-part interview with baseball great and best-selling author Lenny Dykstra here on Backlash on Shark Nation Radio.
They're wising up to it, I think, or, you know, ultimately
No,
they will.
not at all. No, you know, it's the way the union did it, because of free agency. So, you know, a player isn't really a free agent until his 7th year. So if you think about it, he's going to be in his 30s when he signs that big contract. And, you know, you can look it up. I mean, I posted a chart one time, and, you know, it takes all the hitters, not like over 1 year, like it takes a 5-year span. And the bottom line is, when you hit 30 years old, it's just that you don't, you know, that's how you've been playing baseball your whole life. No matter, even if you like you want to, you just don't have the same, you know, abilities, that bounce back ability, you know. And that's just the fact. That's just the cold, hard truth, you know.
Well, here's the question. You were definitely a numbers guy. There's a thing in your book about people's averages when the count is 2-1 versus 3-0 versus 1-2. And the more balls you have on you, the less the pitcher has to work with, and your batting average just goes up. So does it, I guess frustrate's not the word because you just don't care that much, but I'm coming to you as a Phillies fan. Jimmy Rollins just ended his career. No plate discipline, playing a lot of skulls. He was a great defensive fielder, but when I look at a guy like that, I say, you know, if he had just a little more play discipline, he'd likely be in the Hall of Fame with the career he had.
Ooh,
and
yeah, he was selfish, so.
But ultimately, he ended up hurting himself. I mean, he.
Well, yeah, he was selfish. That's why. Meaning, well, no. So what happens now? See, the game. Let me tell you something. The game has changed drastically, meaning, I mean, like when you're down 2 runs in the 9th inning, like, and I see a guy swing at, you know, before, you know, number one, you have to take a strike because you can't hit a 2-run home run, no one on base. But I see guys swing and I think, let's figure that out. Let's think about that. So number one, you like I just said, you can't hit a 2-run home run with no one on base. Number two, the odds are, if you're the best hitter, you're gonna have a 70% chance that you're gonna fail because you're gonna hit it at someone. I mean, think about it. They don't have to run to left field, center field, right field, second. They go to them areas because balls go there more times than not over the last 100 years, And so all that is pure selfishness, because as a hitter, you're pretty much going to get a fastball because, they want to walk you. So you're teeing off, and again, when I played, if you did that, like we're fighting, our team with the Phillies. With the Mets, I was a younger player. I kind of was taught how the game was supposed to be played by Keith Hernandez.
Who was one of the best at that, I imagine.
Yeah, he was just a great situational player, and because the game of baseball is played off the scoreboard, and it can be very, very complex if you want to go there. Then it can also be very simple. There's only one way to hit. You hit right or you hit wrong. You get 3 strikes for a reason. It's hard. The game is real hard. So if you get 3 strikes, why wouldn't you guess the first 2? You don't get penalized if you guess wrong.
Well, you were looking for every advantage, and it seems to me that other people are looking for advantage. You had a fight early in the middle of your career with a veteran catcher because he was trying to get advantages by brown-nosing the umpire. In fact, you can tell about that, and I thought that was one of the best stories in the book, that you weren't going to take it. He was taking away your advantage. Rick Dempsey, I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, what happens is the umpires, I say that word lightly because I know a lot about umpires. Trust me.
I know. We'll get to that.
But where I'm going with that is, so they get vacations or time off. So a rookie ump happened to be behind the dish at Dodger Stadium, and Mike Morgan was pitching, who had great control, didn't throw real hard, but I played with him in winter ball. And Dempsey was setting up about 4 or 5 inches off the plate, and this umpire would call strikes, and Dempsey was brown. He was working him,
How does the catcher do that? What does that even mean?
He's just working him. He's saying, "Oh, that's a good pitch." Come on, I think that's a pretty good pitch there. He's working him. He's talking to him. He's He's basically brown nosing him, is what I'm saying. And a lot of them do it. If you think about it, like the Braves scenes, Javi Lopez, he's just set up off the plate. But if you're a good enough pitcher and you can keep the ball in consistent areas, you'll get some calls. But so Dempsey, this is when I'm hitting 400. We're in June, by the way.
1990, yeah.
And so, I'm hitting 400 in June.
Sports Illustrated cover too.
That was when it was really cool to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated. That was one of the biggest thrills ever, by the way, for me.
I remember that.
Yeah. So anyway, Dempsey's, working this ump, and I said to that umpire, I said, "You see that scoreboard out there? What's it say? 4 effing 100. Okay? You know why it says that? Because I know what a strike is. And those pitches you're calling are not strikes. I cannot hit them pitches." I said, "You're letting this guy brown nose. He's been brown nosing you all night." And so Dempsey stands up and says something, and I don't know. I think I said something about his wife, probably. I'm joking, by the way.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, we go right there, and the funny thing about that was Dempsey's the one that tried to throw the first punch, so he got suspended and fined. Nothing happened to me. And I beat his ass too.
Have you ever run into him since then?
No, I don't. Like I said, I don't. I'm not much into the happy rap.
Well, you know what? About the alumni, and I do want to get to umpires in a second. Is it interesting the interaction you have? Because so many of the guys, and I know this, want to hang around baseball one way or the other. If they don't get the minor league coaching job, they're coaching at a high school or something, and they want to be in the game. Your baseball was your life. You said you didn't even go to parties in high school. You didn't care about doing much better than you had to.
Yeah.
Despite being a smart guy, you just cared about being a major league player. But then when it was done, you're like, that part of my life is over. I'm no longer a kid. My body isn't what it used to be.
Yeah.
You moved on. But the other guys don't move on.
Yeah, baseball was my way out of the middle, remember?
Right.
like I was fortunate, very fortunate, and blessed to grow up with a normal family. Meaning, but my mom and dad worked very hard. They worked for a telephone company and didn't make much money. Mm-hmm. And so, every Saturday was our big night. We'd go to Bob's Big Boy, and I'd have to split a meal with my brother. 6 kids. Mm-hmm. And so I just remember saying, I'm never gonna be like that. I'm never gonna have to, worry about money. And by the grace of God, I was given a gift of my gift was baseball. I mean, yours is obviously being triple smart. I mean, I did my research on you too. I know you went to Harvard, and I know you're. That was your gift, but my way out, and fortunately for me, the gift I was given pays a lot of money.
Yes.
So I never actually doubted that I was going to play in the major leagues. It wasn't a matter of because I'll tell you what, Adam. One of the things that's kind of odd, where it blows your mind is your first spring training. Because what happens is, in the minor leagues, you stretch as a whole organization. So you got the rookie, A-ball, double A, triple A. And I remember my first spring training in the front row, man, stretching, and we did back stretch. I turned and I looked behind me, and I saw a sea of blue hats with the Mets. I mean, it looked like thousands of them. It was but I didn't say oh my God, how am I going to make it with all these people? They didn't even faze me. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because why? I knew I could hit. I knew I could run the first. I could run the second, third, and score, and play defense. I kept it. So that was how I approached it.
That's kind of unique, though. I mean, you didn't doubt yourself for a second, and I imagine that came across to other teammates. I mean, Billy Beane, who is the A's general manager, the subject of Moneyball, said that he started self-doubt. A lot of his self-doubt, some of it at least, came from interacting with you and realizing he could never have the utter, the lack of worrying about any failure. Was that
right, exactly. Well, think about Billy Beane, okay? Billy Beane, by the way, great guy, and if you ask me, the best general manager of all time.
Well, he found his true calling. Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying that what he did with those teams with no money, is amazing. And Beane, he was always a smart guy. And one of the funny things about Billy is me and him roomed together a couple of years. He'd always be reading books, And I said to him, dude, I said, that's bad. That's going to hurt your eyes, man. You shouldn't be reading. And, it's just so funny because, I never read a book in my life until I got to prison,
Yeah.
Or, because
it's like Ted
I never
Williams
jerked off.
The movies.
Never jerked off in my life either until I got to prison.
It changed.
No, I didn't. Then I became like Benihana, Then it was amazing. But anyways, Beane. So here's a 6'4" stud that was had a full ride to Stanford. Very, very smart, and got drafted 1-2. Him and Strawberry were the first 2 picks. So he's a guy used to dominating, okay. But the thing about it is Billy, baseball, here's what the public doesn't really understand. It's so every night, and by the way, it's for 6 months. 4 or 5 times a night if you're an offensive player, it's all or nothing, meaning you either get a hit, meaning you succeed, or you fail. And there's no middle, okay? So when you fail, meaning what you're going to do if you're the best player in the game 70% of the time, and you have to walk the gauntlet, meaning you got all your teammates on the dugout, and you have to walk down the whole dugout, put your helmet back in the rack. And so, nobody says nothing to you because you just made it out. What are they going to say? Good job. You're going to fight them. I mean, so you get the Russian spy treatment,
Right.
And then like you feel like a Russian spy, meaning like no one says nothing. Like you feel like a raisin.
Yeah.
And then you get down to the end, and the coaches are kind of, because the coaches for the most part are all front runners, and so they kind of, you can feel them looking at, there he is, that's the guy, there he is, almost like you had a disease.
Uh-huh.
And so think about that, like feeling, by each and every at bat. When you get a hit, everyone's going to throw you high fives, and it's great. But it's back to what this whole game of life is about, whether it's in business or sports, and it's about results, man. If you get the results, okay, you get, good things happen. And, just like when I'd walk by Fergosi at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'd be coming in, he'd be having breakfast, but, I get 2-3 hits and like, no problem, But if you don't perform, that's when the problems start. And,
then they start looking.
And so, oh yeah, man.
That's a good manager also.
Results.
A good manager. It's interesting. You say you had the determination. I don't think anyone can question that you were as determined a player as there's ever been. And you also viewed baseball. It was your passion, but it was also your way out. But you clearly liked baseball. You played with some guys who were probably gifted with significantly better physical skills and tools than you were given, and did not have Hall of Fame careers. I'm talking about Strawberry and McReynolds, but they probably just didn't like baseball that much. Well,
that's obviously, like I said, you're triple smart. You've done your research. You know how it works.
Oh, that's in your book.
Because if you think about it, I mean, the public doesn't really understand. It's not baseball like baseball is like, is like Little League, or you're going to play a baseball game. No, man, it's 7 months, if you count spring training, of straight baseball with the same group of people. And that is a schedule. It's without a doubt the most rigorous and toughest schedule in all of professional sports. But so it becomes you have to learn how to limit damage. You're in the business. And I'm talking about an offensive player, you're in the business of damage control, because you already know going in, if you're the best player, you're going to fail 70% of the time. So, but if you're a pitcher, I mean, like for instance, let's take Tom Glavine, who's in the Hall of Fame. When I hit off him, I wanted to catch the ball and throw it back to him. But remember, as a pitcher, you're a 70% favorite. So you should be walking out to the mound like you got a 15-inch you-know-what. If you play right, and meaning you keep that chain going, So, meaning the chain, like picture like a chain link, like when it just keeps going and going and going. And when you walk someone, though, one of them links break and everything goes haywire on you.
Right.
So as long as you play right, like Glavine and Maddox did, and use the percentages, they ended up in the Hall of Fame. And it's the little things. It's the little things that go. That you have to really be astute and know what's going on to understand how they can affect the outcome of a game.
And that translates to life, of course, too. I mean, it relates to the fear of failure, which you clearly don't have. And I think when you say most people go through their life guided by fear, it's something that a baseball player doesn't have to worry about, because if you're failing 70% of the time at the plate, as you say, you're doing great, or you're doing pretty well.
Well, you have to worry about it, though, because what happens is remember, there's every year, they draft another 50 players, they give another, there's always somebody younger, faster, and stronger. And it's kind of like in business. I mean, the way I approached business was, I'm smart enough to know I'm not smart enough. So I was a team builder when I ran my businesses. I made more money off the field than I made on the field. But not because I was it was a completely different mentality off the field than on. Meaning, when I played baseball, you know, I could take care of business myself, but when it came to business, you know, I was mentored and fortunate to have a great friend who's was a billionaire, and his name's Bert Brodsky,
yep.
who was the best man at my wedding. And you know, he taught me, you know, a lot of things, and you know, ego is the number one thing that kills in business. So
really?
What I was very good at doing was motivating my people and incentivizing them, and that's why I would be a great baseball manager. I don't think my liver could take it, you know. I mean, because to be in baseball as a coach or a manager, you have to become like a professional alcoholic, you know.
Well, you certainly had one of them in New York.
Yeah, they're all like that. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, you know, think about it. What do you do every night? You're playing every night, so if you have a good game, you celebrate. You have a bad game, you drink the misery away. But the game's changed now, you know, I mean, which is a good thing. I mean, you don't want, the drugs are out, by the way, completely out.
Yeah.
Drugs are out of baseball, and that, I mean, which is the way it should be. But
rough
you know,
on guys in
we're
their late 30s, though.
Yeah, and we're kind of talking about baseball too much because once I start getting into baseball, I start talking about, because now it leads me to the Hall of Fame, where I literally went like off on the whole Hall of Fame committee because, you know, I wanted to know why the three best players in baseball were in the Hall of Fame.
Bonds
Clemens and then Pete Rose.
And Rose.
Well, Pete Rose, he'll never get in the Hall of Fame because, you know, Bart Giamatti, you know, died, and you know, Favens and the people in baseball, the brass, you know, blame Pete Rose for that. So, and that's a little different, you know, betting against your team or whatever. That's kind of like way crossing the line. But again, though, let's use Pete Rose or Bonds. Like, what is the Baseball Hall of Fame? Isn't it about what you do on the field? I mean, if they want to have a good guy contest at the Hall of Fame, then have a good guy Hall of Fame.
Well, it's nice to see that Carter's in there anyway. Oh, you know what? I got to interject
what I'm saying, though, but I have no problem with that, though. My problem is, and like I said to him, I want to know what the threshold is for a guy to be a bad enough guy so he doesn't make, like, what about, so amphetamines are okay. That's okay. I mean, what about guys that beat their wives? What about guys that have
OJ's in the Football Hall of Fame. OJ's in the Football Hall of Fame.
Yeah, but my lawyer Daniel Petrocelli, who was and probably still is the only guy that could tell me to jump, and I'd say how high. He went up. He took when the juice got loose. He took him head on in that civil trial, and you know, buried him. And so, you know, Petrocelli was my lawyer. I saved him probably $8 million. Watching him litigate was like watching 6-4-3 double play, though. Yeah, man, it was. I mean, and lawyers. You're a lawyer too. That's another thing you've done.
I don't
practice.
practice.
The bar in like 5 states or whatever.
No, just four.
Just 4. You know, I don't know. Yeah, see, that comes easy to you. I'd have to cheat, you know.
Good luck with that on the bar. It doesn't work so well. That one you can't.
In fact, you know what I didn't tell? You know a story I haven't told you, or any, like, it's not in my book either, I don't think. But my drama teacher, Mrs. Dahl.
This is what, elementary school?
No, high school. I serviced her, man. I did her.
Oh, you could become the Prime Minister of France.
Addicted to Backlash? Not yet? Catch Adam Taxin, the host of Backlash, Monday through Thursdays, 6 to 7 p.m. for new episodes, as well as Backlash Rewind on Fridays, 6 to 7 p.m. for an action-packed recap of what was trending during the week. You can listen live by going to www.sharknationradio.com, or you can listen on demand by going to SoundCloud and typing in Shark Nation Radio, Twitter by typing in Shark Nation Radio, or YouTube by typing in, you guessed it, Shark Nation Radio. What is Backlash all about? we feature incredible guests, many of whom you know, and some that you will want to know. We discuss trending topics, especially the ones that the biased media might not want to cover. We bring you experts and we keep it fun. Tune into Backlash on your computer or your smartphone. That
was a fun part one of the three-part interview, I guess is what it will turn out to be, with Lenny Dykstra. Definitely a different turn for Backlash here on Shark Nation Radio. And during Lenny Dykstra's classic interview a year or so ago with Howard Stern, one thing, people were talking about it for days, and I did a lot of show prep for this interview with Lenny over the last few days, and he loved the fact that Dennis Leary was commenting, and people were analyzing his interview for days, weeks after that. So I said, why don't we do the same thing here? And let me bring in one of our more popular, I guess, becoming regular guests. I've had great feedback on him. My friend from Columbia Law School, a very successful attorney in D.C., Keith Levenberg, who also happens to be a New York Mets fan. So let's do some post-game analysis of my first part of my conversation with Lenny Dykstra. Keith, take it away.
Well, thank you, Adam. Great to be back on the show. I'm very tickled to be following Lenny Dykstra.
Both of you guys know a lot about the legal system for different reasons.
For very different reasons. I was trying to think before you called me about what I have in common with Lenny Dykstra that would justify me providing color commentary on Lenny's interview, and I came up with two things. Okay. The first is that we have both been in a Shea Stadium. The second,
that's important.
Yeah, the second is that we both have an abnormally gargantuan neck, although for very different reasons.
Gotcha. Well, he's reduced a little bit, but
but that's all I got. I got those two things.
All right. Well, now that you've gotten that out of the way, and you've spent time in court, you both guys.
Oh, that's true. That's three things. We got three things now. Excellent.
Yes. We'll leave it at that. Well, how'd I do? First of all, you got to keep in mind that this first part is much more buttoned up and tame than what you're going to hear the next 2 days. We're going to get a little bit looser. This was largely baseball oriented, and probably could have been similar with your typical interesting former baseball player, your typical very interesting. It's going to go to a whole other level tomorrow. Wait till we get to Israel and his thoughts on the Jewish people, which the Jewish people will like. And then when we talk about some of his just greater philosophies of life, it's going to get into. Then near the end, that's when you're going to want to put the kids away and listen to it. But what are you thinking? How did I do? I mean,
all right, well, good.
What were your favorite parts?
I'm looking forward to parts 2 and 3 now. I thought you did a great job with the interview. I think that is what interviews should be. We were talking about this once before when you had me on the phone or whatever. We're talking about good interviewers and bad interviewers. Like the good ones that it's just like there are a couple of guys hanging out over a couple of beers talking about wherever the conversation goes.
Right.
Not like those fake contrived interviews you see on gold guys Jay Leno or whoever the late night clowns are these days that I don't even watch, where they have the same rehearsed bits that are good for 4 or 5 minutes of a fake interview. Now you did a real interview there. That was great. And who would have thought that Lenny was such an inspiring guy? You could put some of his lines on Successories quote posters.
Oh yeah. Oh no, you haven't read his book, have you?
No, I haven't read the book.
He definitely has been down and he's up, but there's a sense of determination that comes through that makes sense if you think about him as a player, and you remember that, that you get the sense this is a guy you would want on your team because he will make you win and he will make the other people better and he will keep everything loose in the clubhouse. And
it's such a pro athlete attitude to the nth. You hear about people all the time that are talking he had the talent. If only 1 or 2 things had gone his way, he could have been a big leaguer or whatever. It's no, lots of people had the talent, but the only ones that actually make it are the ones like Lenny, who are just completely unafraid and just they have the attitude. The attitude is much rarer than the talent.
You read Moneyball, or are you at least familiar with it?
I'm a huge fan of Moneyball, yeah.
Well, you know what Billy Beane said about him? I mean, that was in the interview, that he started to have self-doubts in large part by interacting in the minor leagues with Lenny, and how he would never be able to have the same sort of mindset that just, you won't care if you have a bad at bat. Nothing bothers you. You only are going for success all the time.
Yeah, no, you can't be reflective guys if you're trying to play professional baseball or whatever. You gotta be out there to win
Billy
every
Beane
moment.
Called him the perfect, and I didn't mention it at all in the 2 hours of the interview, the perfect mindset for a professional baseball player.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, so it's fun. Well, did he seem any differently from how you remembered him as a player, or the many things you've heard about him after his playing career?
No, I mean it's been years for me since I was in the game. Certainly years since I watched him play for the Mets. But that's just about the personality you'd expect out of the guy. So you watched him when he was on the Phillies. I watched him I watched him before that when I was a kid watching the late '80s Mets, which I don't think it was just my age. Like for me, there was a sort of like golden age of baseball. It was never quite the same after that, because after that, it wasn't just the steroid era that came after that. It was like the era of like physical fitness and athleticism. Like when I was a kid, you could still like figure that if you spent enough hours like playing baseball or swinging the bat in your backyard, maybe just maybe you could become a baseball player one day, because it was about playing baseball. And then instead of just people swinging the bat, training for baseball started to be about like bench pressing and weight training. And it's like, oh no, that turns it into a totally different game. The Dykstra era Mets, they weren't taking like performance enhancing drugs. Well, for the most part, some of them were. They weren't taking like performance debilitating drugs. I remember, like Hernandez, after that bat, would go back into the dugout and light a cigarette.
Yeah,
I baseball when you could be a guy who could smoke a cigarette in the dugout and still be a professional baseball player, or eat as much foie gras as Rusty Staub obviously did.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Dykstra didn't do the drugs or the amphetamines when he was. I mean, it's easier when he was younger. His body could take more, but he didn't do the party drugs, the steroids, or the amphetamines at that point. He said he was pretty clean when he was on the Mets, and he hadn't really started the party mentality, I guess, with the women. Yeah. That had already started.
Right. That was definitely a highlight of your interview.
Oh, you haven't heard anything yet. What did I even say? That's coming up in part 2 and part 3. What was the highlight? I don't even remember.
I don't know. He was talking about backing up the bus with the college girls.
Oh, yeah. But to me, that's kind of brilliant, because what I gathered, and I'll talk about this later, and I got to let you go in a minute, is the way he figured that, look, he's going to be chasing it on the road, make whatever judgment. So that's a given. That's not a variable. So his key thing at that point was, how do I get the most sleep? Or maybe it wasn't that important. How do I do that most efficiently? And that was more a thing, I guess, with the Phillies later on. He would make sure that it was all lined up ahead of time, which led him to make sure he would have the nicest suite and the nicest hotel, because it's easier than going to a bar to just bring the party to your suite, which meant the best girls his posse could find. And,
So when you put it that way, it's really just an issue of time management and efficiency. He's almost like the Billy Beane of womanizing. He came up with, the most efficient method for...
I'm not kidding.
Maximizing the women with the resources available.
Oh yes, absolutely. And the sleep and the factors there. He didn't want to waste time playing darts or chit-chatting over beer. Keith, I got to let you go. We're out of time, but maybe we'll bring you back for analysis for parts 2 and part 3. This is great.
Fun stuff, Adam.
All right, thanks, Keith Levenberg.
Did you know you can catch Backlash clips on YouTube? Why would you want to watch Backlash on YouTube? Because we know that you want control over your content and what narratives you're fed. Cable news is expensive, and often it leaves you to choose between a boring conservative on one channel or an unhinged Rachel Maddow on another. Watch our clips on YouTube as Adam Taxin talks with the likes of Ben Shapiro, Kimberly Guilfoyle, Ron DeSantis, Brooke Goldstein, and others that you will love. Adam is a conservative, and he keeps it real. Tune into our YouTube channel and enjoy commentary that is conservative and intellectually stimulating. Just go to YouTube and type in Shark Nation Radio in the search box. Once you're on our channel, you have free access to all of the great conversations Adam has had with people you will definitely want to hear from. You can also follow us on SoundCloud and Twitter by searching for Shark Nation Radio.
So as you probably could tell, we're not even close to being finished. Stay tuned. Tomorrow he's going to talk a lot about Israel, of all things, which he has some experience, and the Jewish people and a lot of other topics, really whatever is on his mind. It goes a lot of different places, and I hope you'll tune in to part 2 of 3 of my extended interview with Lenny Dykstra tomorrow here on Backlash on Shark Nation Radio.